Just how much turnover did the Royals roster have this offseason? We'll tell you next on this edition of Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can follow me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. It's also very easy to find us on wherever you get your podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. We're on Odyssey, and we're on YouTube. Just be sure to hit that follow button and subscribe. Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Opening day is just about a week away, and the weather looks fantastic for it. So head over to Gametime and buy your tickets so that we can sell out Kauffman Stadium. And if you've never used Gametime before, use our code that I'll be giving you later on in today's show so you can get $20 off on your first purchase. A very good deal they are running over at Gametime. If you're a first-time listener, of course, welcome in. We love new listeners here on the Locked On Royals channel. And if you want to know a little bit more about me, where I come from, well, I'm based here in Kansas City. I work at Sports Radio 810 WHB. Got a show once a week over there. And I also stay very busy in the producing world. So my life basically revolves around sports. But that's all things sports over there. When you come here, when you click on this link, when you are checking out baseball in Kansas City, you want to come right here because it's 30 straight minutes of Royals baseball. And kind of fun for me tonight because as I am doing this podcast, I actually have the game on right below me. I know they're on Bally Sports tonight, so for a lot of us, you'll be able to watch the game. Looks like right now they have Bo Jackson in studio, so pretty cool there for Rex and Ryan. So kind of a half live, but also when I post this later, it's not going to be live anymore, but kind of cool here for me. I have the chance to do this podcast and also watch some Royals baseball. The real deal, as I said, just about a week away. Can't wait for the regular season. Well, I thought I would do some digging earlier today. This just popped in my mind while I was at work. And, as we're getting closer to next Thursday, I started to wonder, just how different is this roster, right? Because for people to believe that you've changed, that you are different, it can't always just be word of mouth. There has to be some action to it. You actually have to show that you are different. And one of the best ways you can show that you are different is by replacing people, by bringing in new people, because we've never seen this group of people work together. These players work together. We know what last year's squad looked like. We know what last year's opening day roster looked like. And I am here to tell you that this may be the most dramatic turnover that I can remember in Royals history. And it's the right thing to do. When you lose 106 games, you're supposed to have a lot of turnover. That should be a given. That should be easy. You lose that much, something has to change. And boy, did the Royals change. Now, I did some digging, went back and just kind of compared both rosters, and I went, wow, there's a lot more guys gone than I thought. Now, here's where I'm going to start it off, because this blew me away. As I'm going across other teams in baseball, what their rosters are going to look like. The final cuts haven't been made yet, but you can have a pretty good assumption as to who's going to make which roster. I headed over to FanGraphs, looked at all the depth charts, looked at everybody's bench, and see if any of the former Royals actually popped up. Well, 11 guys that were on the Royals opening day roster last year are not going to be on opening day rosters this year. Not just starters, not just handling a situation where they're with the team, but they're in the minor leagues. Like, this is everywhere. This is not just the Royals. This is everywhere. The guys they had on last year's roster, the opening day roster, it was not a very good one, as we all came to find out. But the fact that 11 guys aren't going to be on opening day rosters, not starters, just rosters, being a bench bat, is staggering to me. Three of those 11 guys that I'm about to go through here are no longer affiliated with a baseball or a Major League Baseball organization. Some of them are still in baseball, but not with a major league organization. So here's the stat that I'm going to read off to you. Just did some research earlier today. It wasn't that tedious, wasn't that difficult, but here is what I was able to gather. So 42% of last year's opening day roster is no longer playing in the big leagues. You have Hunter Dozier, who's in the Angels system, who the Royals are taking on tonight. Matt Duffy in the Rangers system, though he could have a chance. I just didn't see him on the depth chart or on the bench for the Rangers 26-man roster. Jackie Bradley Jr., no longer in baseball. He is not in any single Major League Baseball organization. Franmil Reyes, no longer in Major League Baseball. He's actually over in Japan right now for the Nippon Ham Fighters. So he was a starter on opening day for the Royals. Nate Eaton is not going to be on the Royals 26-man roster, though he'll be in the minor leagues. Zach Greinke right now, not affiliated with any club. He was the opening day starter last year. Brad Keller in the White Sox organization, not going to make that team, though he might have a chance at some point this season to get some innings out of Chicago's bullpen. Chris Bubich, not going to be in the 26-man roster, but that is injury-related. Amir Garrett, who the Royals saw last night against the Giants, he is probably not going to make that bullpen. Dylan Coleman got sent to minor league camp in Houston. He was another top-end guy for that bullpen. And Carlos Hernandez is not going to be on the 26-man roster as he's still working his way back. So two of those guys have injury-related problems, but that's 11. 11 guys from last year's opening day squad are not going to be on an opening day roster this year. And all they had to do was just crack the roster, just be a bench bat. Like Everett Olivares is not a starter, but he also wasn't a starter last year on the Royals 26-man roster, not until late in the season. Here is even a more fascinating point, because a lot of you out there are going to be going, well, I feel like there's more players out there that aren't back, and you know, that's a much higher number than 11. Well, you would be exactly right, because only 8 guys, who in my projection at least, 8 guys that were on the opening day roster last year are back. So 18 new names. Here's an even more alarming, but a good thing for the 2024 Royals. With Hernandez having an injury setback, there is not a single returning member to the bullpen from last year that was on opening day. Not one. If Hernandez was back, he would be the lone 2023 opening day guy out of the bullpen, or one of the bullpen spots, to be returning in 2024. But since he's still building back up in surprise, 8 new guys in the bullpen. Nicky Lopez is going to be a starter, but that's for the Chicago White Sox. He's not back, right? Edward Olivares is not back. He'll be a bench bat in Pittsburgh. You know, it did not have a very loaded group. The Royals did not have a very loaded or depth-filled group last year. And J.J. Picollo, who has been touted as being transactional, really was transactional when it's all said and done. I mean, there are 3 new guys for the rotation, ones that weren't there last year. An entire new bullpen. Okay, yeah, some guys are coming back from last year. I mean, you've got Bobby Wood Jr. at shortstop. Massey was the opening day second baseman. They're taking it day to day with him right now with that sore back. Vinny Pasquantino's back at first. Isbell's back in center. And Melendez is back in left. But right field, that's different. Hunter Renfroe's now out there. Third base is different. It was Hunter Dozier last year. Now it's Maikel Garcia. Salvi's back. There's no change there. But think about that. 18 new faces for the Royals in just 1 year. That is an astronomical change. I mean, I'm still stumbling over my words to begin this podcast. You've probably seen me lose my train of thought a few times here because I'm trying to pull up the numbers and trying to cross-check them and everything. I mean, that to me is something I wish the Royals would have done in 18, would have done in 19, would have done in 20, would have done in 2022. When you lose that many games, it is on you to make sure that team is different for next year. The Royals spent a lot of money this offseason. They were very transactional. And it is crazy to see how much of a difference you can make in 1 year. Crazy to think how different a roster can look. I mean, you can have a brand new rotation. The Royals made an emphasis to change up the bullpen. They didn't bring back one guy from the opening day roster last year. Now, they have some pieces that joined them midseason, right? James MacArthur's one of those guys. He's going to be a piece, but new to the bullpen, Will Smith, Chris Stratton, John Schreiber, Nick Anderson. There's 4 new guys. Matt Sauer, there's 5. Then you'll bring back probably Marsh, who was in the bullpen at one point, Serpa, who was in the bullpen. No, McMillan eventually, and Hernandez eventually, but it's a brand new bullpen. I mean, last year the high leverage guys were Amir Garrett, Dylan Coleman, and Scott Barlow, all gone. 2 of those guys are not going to be on opening day rosters. That shows you how mismatched they were. It was a complete roster purge, but a purge for the better. When you've got 11 guys that are not going to be on opening day rosters this year, that is a pretty big number. This year, they replaced him with a lot of guys who not only were on opening day rosters last year, but starters. Guys in the rotation, guys in high leverage spots for the bullpen, guys that were in the middle of the order. That's all good for the Royals, and that's why I can't wait for next Thursday when they take on the Minnesota Twins at 3:10 to kick off the regular season. Okay, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, brutal news for a former first-round pick of the Royals. Asa Lacy, once again, is going to miss the entire year. Let's dive into that next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to follow me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, let's give a shout out to one of the sponsors today in PrizePicks. Football season may be over, but the action on the floor is heating up. Whether it's tournament season or the fight for playoff home court, there's no shortage of high-stakes basketball moments this time of the year. Get in on the excitement with PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app, where you can turn your hoops knowledge into serious cash. You can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on PrizePicks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. So here is what you need to do. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, that is LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. So very good deal there over at PrizePicks. But we got the word from Asa Lacy's Instagram last night that he has undergone surgery to repair ligament damage to his UCL. So he is going to miss the entire year once again. He has not pitched since 2022. We didn't really know what the injury concerns were last year, but I will be completely open, completely candid, completely honest with what I was hearing and surprised. And those were very good things about Asa Lacy, that he had gotten to camp and they were liking what they were seeing. And these were things that made you feel good about what he could potentially do in 2024. Maybe not get close to the big leagues, but find some form of footing at the minor league level. That could be in high, that could be in AA, just getting him back there, to be honest. And if he got back on the mound and he found some past version of him, the one that was at A&M, right? The one that we had seen be so effective in college, even early on into his pro career. The big strikeout numbers, the big curveball, even though it was a wonky looking windup, looked a little weird out of the stretch. You know, nothing about it looked smooth, but it was working. And injuries might have derailed his career. I mean, you're looking at, a guy that is heading along the same lines of Kyle Zimmer. Oh, man. We all remember the Kyle Zimmer saga in Kansas City. First round pick, and through his young minor league career, just couldn't stay healthy. And eventually, he got up to the bigs. He was pitching out of the bullpen. He was effective for a little bit out of the bullpen. He had found a little bit of what the Royals were hoping for. But I would be a little bit remiss in saying that these guys are just not the same. I don't know how you look at Asa Lacy's path now and say he's still going to get there. I mean, it is a very small percentage now that Asa Lacy actually gets to Kansas City. And I'm not even meaning in the same capacity they once thought he could be in. A frontline guy for the rotation, a starter, a high leverage guy out of the bullpen. Those are out the window now. You are looking at a guy that if he makes it, it's not going to be a long and illustrious career. I just don't see it being that way. There's too many injury concerns. And you think about the buildup again. And today was like my research day for just digging into information. And I must have just been bored at work and thought this would be the good time to do it. But you go back to his final year at college, the COVID season, the shortened season, only threw 24 innings. Now, he had an ERA that was under 1. I think he made somewhere between 4 and 6 starts, something like that. It might have been 4 starts now that I think about it. And just was dominating. Big strikeout numbers. Not really walking too many guys. I mean, I go back to that draft, and it was the right pick. If the Royals would have passed on Asa Lacy, people would have questioned, why are you passing on a guy like Asa Lacy? He was the best left-handed college pitcher in the draft. Electric stuff. I was told down in Surprise from an anonymous source that he had talked to a college coach in Texas, and he was like, Asa Lacy's the best college pitcher I've ever seen. He was that good, that dominant. But when he got to Kansas City, it was the injury problems. It was the lack of command. I mean, last year it was so quiet and unknown as to what happened. He just didn't throw, or at least we didn't see him. We didn't have any documentation that he was throwing. So he misses all of last year, and then we get some reports in the offseason. He's working out. He's looking better. Thinking some, couple of drills. He was hitting 100 miles an hour, not typically off the mound, and nothing like that. I think you're looking at, some form of high-octane drill where you get a crow hop in, you're hitting triple digits. It was more so that. So it wasn't like Asa Lacy was hitting 100 on the gun, and just all of a sudden, this guy's back. He's increased 5, 6, 7 miles an hour to his fastball. It wasn't something like that, but he was building up the arm. I thought there was something to be interested in, to look at and go, maybe, just maybe, there's a big leaguer in there still. But going back to that point of college, he only threw about 24 innings. And then professionally, and this includes the Arizona Fall League, which I didn't have to do, he's only thrown about 88 innings in his pro career. And he only threw those 24-ish in college. So when he begins resuming his normal drills, he resumes throwing, when he does all of that, he will have had 111 2/3 innings from March of 2020 or February of 2020 to March of 2025. 5 years. And that's the workload that he's had. And he will have not thrown in the professional game since 2022. That's the gap we're talking about. 2.5 years. It's so unfortunate because you feel for the kid. You feel horrible for a kid like, I can't imagine the mental stress of being a top 5 pick. And you are just touted as this ace. He is going to be a fast riser in the system. He's joining the ranks of Bobby Witt Jr., who's going to be in Kansas City in no time. And Asa Lacy is going to be the guy. Brady Singer and Coar and Lynch, they'll be right behind him. But Asa Lacy's the ace. His name was perfect for it. Asa the ace. It was going to be perfect. But injuries got in the way. And I would be, completely naive in saying that there was no mental hurdle there. There had to have been a mental hurdle. Any human being would struggle with that. Knowing that I just can't stay healthy. And when I have been healthy, my numbers haven't been that good. It's a frightening thing for a 20-something-year-old pitcher to deal with. And Asa Lacy's not the first. He's not going to be the last that deals with stuff like that. But you just feel awful for him because I thought there was something there. I thought that this year he was going to get back up on the horse, just get to Double-A, and maybe find some command again and get that confidence and that swagger back. I think a lot of that was missing last year, 2 years ago, actually. Missing the confidence in yourself. That you want to be out there. You want to feel like every time you take the ball, you're going to dominate. And that's what he was in college, but it just was never the same. in coming over to Kansas City. And to be a competitor, to be a professional pitcher, and have to be on the sidelines for more than 2 years. I mean, I'm hardcore rooting for Asa Lacy to still get there. And even if it's not, a long stay in the big leagues, that would be fascinating to see him just get there. Just one time. Even if it was one outing. It's like a doubleheader and he's the 27th man. It wouldn't matter to me. Because that's a 5-year gap of not really being able to do anything. I mean, the COVID year was weird. That threw off a lot. 2021 was weird and 22 wasn't very good. And then 2023 is gone. And now he's dealing with more arm problems. In 2025, who knows what he looks like? Who knows if he can stay healthy? So it's going to be quite the comeback story if he actually does it. But I, for one, am absolutely rooting for him to do the impossible at this point. It kind of feels like everything is stacked against him. If he gets there, boy, it will be cool to see. But just a heart-wrenching and gutting story to see that Asa Lacy once again is going to miss the entire season. Okay, before we move on to our final segment of the show, want to give you a reminder that today you can actually go check out our Locked On Sports preview that came out earlier tonight at 6 p.m. Central Time. So you can go get some local insight from the experts, including myself, on the Locked On Podcast Network. You can find that, again, right now on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. When we return, I'm going to dive into a little bit of what I saw with Seth Lugo last night and his final spring start of the year. That's next on Locked On Royals. You are tuning to Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. Be sure to give me a follow on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. That's at JOHNYJ_15. Before we go any further, want to give a shout out to the other sponsor today in Gametime. Now, opening day is right around the corner, so go and buy your tickets. And if you haven't used Gametime before, we've got a code for you that can save you $20 on your first purchase. Now, I use Gametime for not just baseball games. I use them for college hoops games, college football games, NFL games, concerts, comedy shows. The list goes on and on and on, and it is so easy with everything they have set up for you. So here's what you need to do. Go and download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off on your first purchase. Well, things didn't go very well for Brady Singer tonight against the Los Angeles Angels, his final start of spring training. But I thought the opposite a little bit of Seth Lugo, who threw last night. It was on MLB TV against the Giants, and I'm going to get right out in front of it. He had an absolutely putrid defense last night, especially on the left side of the infield. Garrett Hampson and Mike Brasso were just they were playing the circus music over there on the left side. And I ended up tweeting it out that there's going to be a lot of nights that Seth Lugo is very happy that Maikel Garcia and Bobby Witt Jr. on the left side of his infield, not Mike Brasso and Garrett Hampson. I think Garrett Hampson is far more of a second baseman than he is a shortstop. I just don't know if the arm strength is really there or the quick reactions over there. I think Garrett Hampson will plug in just fine at second base, and I think Mike Brasso will provide good depth down in Omaha unless he decides to be a free agent, elect free agency instead of going down and playing minor league baseball. But overall, I don't really have many complaints about what I saw from Seth Lugo. I thought his stuff looked really good. He had 5 strikeouts in 3 2/3 and gave up a home run. I think he gave up 2 home runs, but one of those came right after a drop pop-up, and that was Mike Brasso in foul territory, not calling the ball off from, I think it was Salvi, or I can't remember who was behind the plate last night for Seth Lugo, but just, toot blands. Now, I know those are for more so on the base paths, but I'm going to use them here for fielding. Toot blands all around the infield. At the outfield was very spotty as well. So Seth Lugo did not get any favors from his defense. But the pure stuff, I thought looked okay. I thought it looked just fine. I think his curveball has a really good snap to it. It's going to get a lot of swings and misses or a lot of soft contact this year. And his fastball's got good movement as well. That's, I think, the most exciting thing about the new additions for the Royals. It's not like they just went out there and got guys who had good numbers last year. That is step one. If you're going after guys in free agency, you would like those guys to have had good numbers, good stats in the previous year. But with Waka and Lugo, these guys have pitches that move, that can be difficult for guys to hit when you even don't have your best stuff on that night. Like Seth Lugo with a good defense and his stuff working can give you what he did last year, which was 17 quality starts. He can work into the 6th inning. He can work into the 7th inning. He throws strikes, and he's got pitches that move. Michael Wacha can have the same thing. And that's the good part about this. Like last year, Reagans was the only guy in that rotation that truly had stuff that could make people miss. And if they did barrel it or they did make contact, it wasn't really smoked. It wasn't really hit that hard. Wacha and Lugo can do that for you. And when I'm seeing his pitches move and you're getting some wonky swings, some weird swings from San Francisco, I get it, spring training. That's good movement. It's good movement, and it reminded me to think back to last year and looking at some of Seth Lugo's stats, his outings, and some of his video, his film, that there's going to be those times where he gives up 2 in the first. There's going to be those times where he's given up 4 through 2 innings. But I believe he's got the stuff, and I'm sure the Royals believe he's got that stuff to get you through 5 or 6 and not give up any more damage. That's what you want in probably every single one of your starters, but realistically, it's not likely to have that in every single starter. Like, as I said, Brady Singer did not look good tonight. He was getting hit hard, didn't have the best command. But last year, I thought that was one of his biggest problems. If things were not going well in the first, it wasn't going to get much better. And you don't want 5 of those guys where it just has to go well from the beginning for you to give a good outing. There's going to be times you get roughed up. There's going to be times that you give up a 3-run home run in the first inning and you're still expected to go 5 more innings. Now, are you getting through 6 innings and only giving up those 3? Or are you going to be pulled in the 3rd inning after you've given up 8? We saw that far too often with Royals arms in the rotation last year. And that goes from Jordan Lyles to Brad Keller to Brady Singer to Alec Marsh. Across the board. A lot of those guys could not rebound or bounce back from a poor start. They'd let it just compound. It would get worse and worse. And though Jordan Lyles did what the Royals did pay him to, which was to eat innings, he ate them in an ineffective way. He just would wear it. I don't think he ate innings. He wore innings. He just saved the bullpen. He would give up 7 runs in 6 innings. That's not effective, and I'm not going to praise that. He just wore innings. Lugo and Wacha could eat innings, assuming Matt Quatraro will leave him out there a couple of times to work deep into games, which with what they're paying him, I think they're going to give them a longer leash than San Diego did last year. But I was impressed. I don't care about the ERA that Seth Lugo had in spring training. I think it was north of 6 or north of 7. The stuff for me was playing. The stuff looked good. Getting soft contact, playing to your defense. That curveball is going to generate a lot of strikeouts this year. Michael Walker's changeup is going to generate a lot of strikeouts this year. But I was impressed with it. I think of the order I'd rank it of guys that I've been able to visually see throw. Cole Reagan's top of that list. Then I probably move it down to Seth Lugo, then Wacha, then Singer, then actually I might put Marsh above Singer there, then Singer, then Lyles and Lynch. That's probably the way I'd rank all the guys who have given outings this year in spring training. But no complaints from Seth Lugo. Yeah, I'm going to get some comments on YouTube about the ERA and, it's not really that good. The stuff last night, it looked good to me. He had some really bad defense behind him, and I think he would have had 5 clean innings if it wasn't for some really shoddy play out there in the infield. But again, he's not going to care too much about it. It seemed like he was thrilled with the way he threw the other night and felt like his stuff was on for the most part. Okay, that's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Royals on the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. You can always follow me on Twitter or X at JohnnyJ_15. Before we say goodbye, one last shout out to Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now, available on the free Fire TV Channels app. Tomorrow, we're going to have an episode in the morning dive into a little bit of what Brady Singer looked like. Are we alarmed by it? And some more lineup decisions, and maybe a little bit of what JJ McCullough had to say on the 5th spot in the rotation. But until then, you take it easy, Kansas City.